This video will provide context to a club that has been deducted 15 points this season by the Serie A. But first we must contextualize Juventus FC, because taking each scandal individually does not give justice to the damages they have done to Italian football and world football. So let's start with the doping case of 1998. Between the years 1994 and 1998, Juventus are on the back of 3 Scudetti titles and 1 Champions League against Ajax. On the 25th of July 1998, Roma coach Zeman from the retreat says Calcio must come out of pharmacies if it wants to return to being sport and entertainment. I have seen muscle explosions that I thought possible only after years of bodybuilding. As a result of these comments by the Roma coach, Italian authorities raid the Juventus training ground and find over 281 different drugs. The majority of these were all legal, but it's the different types and amounts of drugs which really shocked Italian authorities. During this trial, a hematologist studied the hemoglobin levels of Juventus players from February to August of 1998, and he explained that these hemoglobin levels could only be explained by blood transfusions or the banned hormone EPO. And in March 2007, on the final hearing, we have a definite solution to the case. The Court of Cassation establishes, regardless of whether EPO was used, that the Juventus of Lippi and the Dr. Agricola implemented from 1994 to 1998 a criminal plan to alter matches through the illicit administration of drugs. Because even drugs that are not explicitly banned, when taken at the wrong quantities, can become performance enhancing. Moreover, the court establishes that the players are not victims. They showed dishonorable conduct because they knew what they were doing. However, the doping law was not yet in force in 1998. It only came into force in the year 2000, and that's what ultimately saved Juventus. Moreover, the CEO of Juventus, who was in the first degree trial acquitted from anything, was actually now found guilty of crime sports fraud, along with the Dr. Agricola. However, the fact that so many years have passed since the case meant that the statute of limitations was used on them. They were saved by the fact that this court hearing happened just a little too late. The investigation starts because Italian authorities have reason to believe that the Juventus sporting director, Luciano Moggi, is having direct ties with the Italian mafia. Surprisingly, they find conversations with referees, other clubs, and journalists that were helping Juventus to match fix Serie A games. Because Juventus was not the only club involved, these were the fines and points penalties that were given to the clubs for the following season. Furthermore, the Italian Football Federation strips Juventus of their 2 titles between 2005 and 2006. And the reason why Juventus has been charged so much more than others is because there is reason and evidence to believe that Juventus had a systematic and premeditated approach to this, affecting not only their games, but the games of others in a way that was much more serious than some of what the other clubs were doing. So officially, Juventus only has 36 titles at this moment in time, but they refuse to admit to this day any wrongdoing, and so they shamefully show 38 titles on their stadium. So Juventus, after trying to enhance the performance of their players and trying to match fix the entire Serie A games, they want to take it a step further. They're not happy with just the sporting aspects. No. They want to control and get their hands dirty in also institutional aspects. And we get to the Suarez case. So it's September 2020 and Barcelona are struggling with their finances and they decide not to renew Suarez. Therefore, he becomes a free agent, and Juventus want to snatch him up. They find an agreement, but immediately they run into the problem that Suarez is not an EU citizen, and all of Juventus's slots for non-EU citizens have been used up. So what do Juventus do? They try to get him an Italian passport, and that is perfectly legal because Suarez has Italian grandparents. The only problem is that Suarez doesn't speak a word of Italian, and you need to pass an Italian B1 language test to get the passport. How does Juventus get Suarez to pass this language test in time? Whatever Juventus does to help Suarez, he manages to get to Perugia and finish this test, which usually takes 2 hours in 15 minutes. Now, either Suarez became Einstein, Juventus gave him the best Italian teacher there is in the world, or something fishy happened there. The investigation that followed concluded that Suarez had been given the exam papers by the university deans and professors, and that is how he managed to pass the test. At the end of the process, the university professors were suspended, but no charges of sporting fraud were given to Juventus. This is because in the end, Suarez never went to Juventus. Apparently, Juventus understood what they were doing, what trouble they would get into, and they had someone tell them from the inside, guys, you better watch out with this, and you should drop Suarez or else the consequences are going to be massive. And so Suarez takes the test, passes it, but never goes to Juventus. Although no sporting fraud was committed by Juventus, the court does mention that Juventus lawyers acted as moral instigators in this whole affair. The Plusvalenza case, which is a series of capital gains that Juventus did for a value that was much higher than what the market value of those players were. Now, the cases of Plusvalenza are more evident when you look at the swap deals that Juventus did with players of similar value. For example, let's take a look at Pjanic and Arthur. Instead of just saying, hey, we'll just swap each other, these players, and not record any gains or losses, no, what they did was that they swapped these players, each paying the same amount. And instead of doing it on their real market value, for example, 40 million each, they decided to inflate these prices and do it for 70 million each. Now, why is that? Because when you sell a player, you can record 100% of that revenue. So if I sell you Pjanic for 70 million, I put down this year that I gained 70 million. And when I buy Arthur from you, accounting records allow me to amortize this expense over the years of the contract that I give Arthur, which is a net gain of around 50 million. Now, in theory, this is not so bad because over the next few years, Juventus still have to pay Barcelona and put into their accounting books that they're paying 17.5 million to them a year. And that is a loss with no revenue this time associated from the Pjanic sale. So to cover this expense, what do? They do this whole process again and again and again with other players so that they are never seen to be in a loss. That is the difference between doing it once and doing it systematically over 40 times. Moreover, unlike many other Italian clubs, Juventus are on the stock exchange. That means they have much more severe accounting principles and rules that they need to comply to. They can't do these kind of things. And Juventus knew how bad the situation was. So the president, Agnelli, and the directors, Nedved and Arrivabene, all resigned from the board in an attempt to save face and Juventus. And that may have helped Juventus slightly, but in the end they still got a 15-point penalty deduction because of what they did. The worst is yet to come, because that's not the only financial scandal that they are involved in, and this next one is even worse, because they are explicitly lying on their financial statements about how much money they have and how much money they are spending. So this is the situation. In 2020, COVID hits, And as a result, the Serie A stops, and nobody knows for how long this will go on for. All of a sudden, Juventus have all these costs and no way of making revenue. So what do they decide to do? They decide to ask their players to let go of 4 months of salaries. And that is fine. You can do that. It's not a great signal to your investors, but it's not illegal. The problem is that Juventus then decided to pay the players these months of salary off the books. That means that they were telling investors that they were going to save all this money, but in fact, they weren't. And how did Juventus do this? They made the players sign first one agreement where they let go of 4 months of salary, and they could make this public. And then they have a second piece of paper that they keep top secret, where the players and Juventus sign that they would receive this money at a later date. And there is so much evidence of this happening. There are wiretapped phone conversations between Juventus sporting director Cherubini and Paratici saying, if this piece of paper comes out, this one that should theoretically not exist, they'll come for our throats. Moreover, there is WhatsApp leaked screenshots of Chiellini, the club captain at the time, asking the players to, for stock exchange reasons, please do not speak to the press about the details of this agreement. Let's do our bit and we will be a team of true men. This time, Juventus don't just risk a mere 15 points deduction. They risk tens, if not hundreds of millions of euros in damages to shareholders. And this could lead them down to Serie B if they're lucky. So there you have it, guys. In the last 25 years, Juventus have tried to cheat the sporting world, the institutional world, and the financial world. If you like this video, smash that like button and subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you think the punishment will be for Juventus. Ciao.